that, neither of us are there on the ground, and neither of us are getting the high level directives that are coming out of the campaign or the training that various people may be getting. I do want to touch on one thing that you just said that may or may not be true. It may or may not. Different people have different skills and different things that they want to do. And in 2016, this is my experience, and everybody is different. In 2016, I made some phone calls for Bernie, but I didn't really. I wasn't part of the campaign here in Hawaii. I was on Facebook, all the time, but I wasn't part of the campaign here per se. But what I was very involved in was organizing fundraising for the state convention, and ultimately getting Tim Vanderveer elected as the chairperson, who he was for Bernie, and very forcefully so. So my point being that the people who go into the deepest room there is aren't necessarily the same people that are out knocking on every door. Maybe that point doesn't need to be made, but what I'm saying is, even though I like talking to people and I like walking, so, knocking on every door seems like a good thing for me to do, but the place where I feel like I can provide some value is in the areas that I'm interested in that most people aren't. And, that's in these process things, the specific process, as well as just the overall, scene.
Right. And this is the point that I'm making, is that when people are out knocking on doors, we should be trying to find all these people and then bringing them back to a system that facilitates them into the right positions where they can be the most effective. Like if we were a movement style campaign using movement politics, that would be the whole process. You're trying to basically build a Christmas tree where you build up and out so that it can support itself, and you have a nice shape, and you have the thing at the top, and you're building support for the whole thing. And it is a little bit of a pyramid scheme, but without trying to get money. You don't promise money back, so it's why it's legal. So
yeah, and it's a matter of, in most of these things, it's a matter of providing accurate information. Some people are going to pick that up, and some people aren't. And for me, where I ended up being a national delegate, and the kind of the context that has given me over the past 4 years, I think that there is somebody out there today or a month ago who just found out about Bernie. They're in the same exact position that I was in exactly 4 years ago. And they, there's 1,000 of them. 1 or 2 of them are in 4 years going to be you or me. In that there is somebody out there who wants to hear what our experience has been, what we have gleaned as knowledge, and some things were right, some things were wrong. I mean, that's just the way that it is. But to be able to put that out there to everybody, and whoever wants to, kind of receive that and utilize it can. But if that information is not out there, is not presented at all, people who would be effective never even get the chance to be effective.
We never even figure out who they are in the first place. They don't even figure out the whole process.
Through and go out, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and this goes back to the alienating other people's supporters and pushing people away, because then back to the lurkers concept you were talking about, but I labeled as that, but the people that are watching, the audience of the people on social media. And when you're negative, you end up driving people away. And sometimes we, as our own worst enemies, we drive away people who could be the next big leaders, the next big whatever it is, because they just need to be trained in the right, because the process is super toxic. Let's not kid ourselves. The process is not for good people. Like when people criticize me and be like, Don, I'm just not sure if he's a good person. Well, I'm really good at politics. So you take from that what you will. so it's kind of the whole kit and caboodle of what we're trying to deal with. About we need to be aware of that and not allow that toxicity to alienate people from achieving their potential.
Right.
So talking about your potential, and I feel like this is really, needs to be talked about. It's like, you went through all this, you did all this stuff, you learned about all these things, and then you started a Facebook group called DemEnter that effectively was like the organization. I don't even know if the organization is doing anything right now. I've been very vocal about my issues with it in a post-Jason world. But we did a lot of work together in that regard, in the Entryism and all sorts of stuff. So where did this whole thing come from? Like, where? I remember being at the convention. I remember all these people talking about how vulnerable the party was. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I remember parts of the convention. I mean, honestly, I swear to God, it's when you're kind of thrust into this other world, really, where it's like normal things don't make sense. Honestly, it can be hard to kind of remember everything in a lot of ways. But yes, you and I probably talked every day, nearly every day, multiple times a day, for months. And
shame I didn't get a chance to be a delegate. That would have been fun.
Yeah.
That would have solved a lot of
problems. I might have solved some and created some others, but
created new ones.
But at any rate, going into that convention, I knew going into that convention that we were not going to come out with the nominee. I knew that because I had looked beyond what I wanted to happen. I looked beyond all this stupid stuff has happened and the whole process is corrupt. And so, like, if you're just hung up on that, you can't really see the steps beyond. So going into the convention, knowing that we were not going to come out as the nominee, lets you try to tailor what you do to something that will be effective. Because if you're trying to do all these things in order to get the nomination at the last minute, and frankly, early on you had an idea that I was like, dude, that's the stupidest goddamn thing I've ever heard. But that's how it has to go. You have to look at all the possibilities because, like we said, the whole thing's insane. Crazy doesn't mean ineffective.
We actually got to a point.
Might be the most effective thing there is. so you have to review these things under like an umbrella of what are we trying to accomplish here? What is actually possible to accomplish? And throw away everything that's not going to be accomplished.
Basically, what Jason's talking about is that going into the convention, there was a crazy plan I had come up with that technically would work in a fair circumstance.
I'm hopeful that you're talking about the same plan I am.
I don't know, actually. At this point, we
can be a different one. No, come on.
It was the minority reports. And using the minority reports to turn the convention into a caucus, and how the way the minority report process works is that if a group can't get something onto the platform, you write these reports and you submit them to the DNC as a candidate, and then the candidate takes them to the floor of the DNC, and the delegate body is supposed to argue and vote and talk about these sort of things. But the thing is that the DNC is so much pageantry. There's no real time in the modern process for this to happen, even though it should be going on, which is why the pageantry part of the process is total bullshit, because it's taking away this minority vote issue that we should have gone for. So I had taken that to the campaign, and the campaign had already written the minority reports because I had told the people that we needed to write them, and at the platform committee, George Fox and all these other people, and They pulled the minority reports because they realized it was part of a plan to try to make Bernie the nominee that probably wasn't going to work because everything was so messed up. And so we were at the convention, and I was trying to explain to people that they needed to go to the convention first before they went and talked to Bernie, because the Hillary delegates had told me they had a plan to break up all the people so that they couldn't get a row of voices. So I was trying to get everyone to go there. And so Jason grabs me, who had been working with the chair of Hawaii, who had some insider information at this point, and he goes, "Don, we have to talk." And I go, "Jason, I'm really busy right now. I don't have time for this." And Jason goes, "No, Don, we have to talk." And I go, "What's wrong, Jason?" And he goes, "It's not going to work." And I go, "What do you mean it's not going to work?" And he goes, "This plan is not going to work." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't need that right now." And he's like, "No, dude."
Yeah.
"No, dude, the phones are off." And I'm like, "What do you mean the phones are off?" And he goes, "They've disconnected the phones. They're not real. It's all just a show." And I go, "Can you run that by me one more time?" And he goes, "There's no way to do a rules interrupt to challenge, because once the campaign had removed the minority reports, a state could still challenge and bring the minority reports to the floor. And so there's still a process for that. But you have to be able to get the phone and call a rule of order and actually have an actual convention, which is not what we had go on." And so Jason is the person who finally explained to me, because I was like, "We'll make whatever work, whatever. We'll keep going, keep trying, move up the ladder. We'll just keep reading the rules and figure it out." And they're like, "Rules." So that was my moment of innocence where Jason looked at me and sat me down. I think we smoked a joint. And then
I don't recall.
I don't recall. And then we had to break the news to a bunch of people who were out trying to work the delegates. So we're trying to do the stuff. They could go sleep tonight, and they still couldn't hear it. They couldn't hear it because they were so amped up that we were still going to push on this issue. But the very rug that we stood on had been removed, and there was nothing left to work with.
You know, I made the point earlier about the establishment holding the ground. And when you know, in a very real world way, when you're in a convention center and there's, I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 people there, whoever controls the soundboard or whatever it is, the phone lines, we should say, in the actual convention center, each delegation has a phone. It's a red phone. I ended up sitting next to one because they're on the aisles, but it's also kind of uncomfortable because this thing is like right there. But I needed to be on the aisle because I didn't want to have to push past people every time I wanted to get out, and I didn't spend a hell of a lot of time in my own delegation. But so there's these phones, and this is what you saw, people, the chairs of various parties, as they go around and they're taking the tally of the delegates for the nomination. These are the phones that they pick up for whatever reasons. But you can't just pick up that phone and talk to somebody important on the other end. They have to patch your phone in, basically. So now you're standing there and there's 5,000 people, and no matter what you want to do in that direction has to go through this phone. And if you pick up the phone and there's nobody there,
or there's no dial tone,
or nothing, I mean, it's not like a phone line. It's, just an intercom system essentially. But like that's because they're paying the person who's sitting at the soundboard. Turn on that one, turn off that one. That's what it is. So again, it's like, having gone through that, now you wouldn't go into that thinking that you could utilize that as a tool because it's not in your hands. I think I was thinking about this last night. A tweet came out from Neera Tanden saying that delegates had chanted "lock her up," which did not happen. But it made me think about what were some of the most effective things that we did as national delegates that had some outcome, and frankly, some of the outcomes were just us being able to vent our frustrations, and that is a useful outcome in and of itself.
like in the international media tent.
That was that was effective in a lot of ways, and I think that was probably the best thing that we did. Another thing, going back to the chants, was our "No More Wars" chant, which was met by a chant of "USA, USA," and
It's
you
still
know,
shocking to me when I think about. I remember being there and that whole thing happening and how they were chanting over it. It was because it was a defense
it was
secretary.
surreal. It was
really hard to take.
It was the most surreal for me. That was probably the most surreal moment of that entire event, which in and of itself was entirely surreal. Because that really brought it home for a lot of people. I feel like people who were in that room, and even if the mainstream media, didn't show that part or whatever, it really drew some lines. And my point of going to that now is that what we did in that moment, we decided to use our collective voice, which could not be silenced. The phone didn't work. That's not an option. But if people, the delegates themselves, are organized to do something, they can do it. And the way that they can do it is by doing it all together. When you have 1,900 people in a room chanting the same thing at the same time, that's undeniable. They cannot stop you. They literally cannot stop you.
What I said the other day, and it's back to the strategy for the Iowa Democratic Party chair to remove him. I said once it happened, work hard, not smart, because when you do both, you become unstoppable. And I think that sort of plays into the same methodology of what you're saying, because you're using your strongest tool, you're communicating with each other, and those are also the key components of organizing. Being a good organizer is being to use your time effectively, which brings us back to the Bernie Sanders campaign, and if they're preparing people, and if they're field, I'm not going to get into it with you because you said you're not knocking doors, so we're not going to talk about it, but whether the field plan is going right or what's happening there, but we're seeing a lack of preparation in that regards. And I just hope, like everyone, I don't want to appear like a naysayer, I hope like everyone on our side, we're going to make the improvements, because you see a lot of things that we should know not to do happening still.
Yeah, and certainly in no way does that mean, it's not worth showing up, because if you don't show up, none of it happens. If you don't show up, you have no opportunity to learn. You have, look, 2024 is going to happen. And I saw this in 2016, going back to just the very basic entryism, in this case, DemEnter concept. Going back to that whole thing, I can show anybody how they themselves or how they can elect someone else as a DNC member. If I can change one DNC member seat, I can change all of them. They all have a process to be changed, except for the appointment.
Yeah, it's 75 appointments and the lifelong former chairs. Former chairs get a lifelong appointment. So like Don Flower, he's like against everything the party does because he's like the grumpy old man in the party. He was a former chair. But even he says the superdelegate reform has to stay because we voted on these rules and you can't change the rules mid-process. So even those people, and that's where I think the distinction in the party is, and I think it's something I would like to talk to you about at great detail, is the split in the party. We can't do it right now. We got to wrap this up. But the split in the establishment. That the establishment isn't this unified front that we see. And and Jason, will you do more of these with me? Can we talk more about this insider stuff? Because I feel like we need to explain to people the where the battlefield is here. Because at the moment, I think the third way is pulling way more of our decision making than people realize.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's the thing is, you and I, it would be interesting to see if we had a timer for all the moments that we have, talked to each other. We've talked to each other for hundreds of hours.
And that's with long stints with Jason being pissed at me too. Don't forget that.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, you were pissed at me too, but
I
it's
don't
only because
know.
it's only because I told you the truth. But
You know what? Hang on one second, dude. Hang on. What Jason is referring to, actually, I don't know what the hell he's referring to.
yeah, don't even.
The point is that Jason was crucial in starting DemEnter, and I had helped him in that process. And it's been a highly controversial concept on whether or not my involvement was actually real, because I used to say on my Facebook post, strategist at DemEnter, right? And that was a big, Jason would call me as these other people were taking over the thing and be like, dude, they really want you to remove that. And I'm like, but bro, we've been doing this since the start. Like, we have obviously 2 DemEnters going on, because they're doing, I'm not gonna be negative. They're doing something that I don't understand, and I'm pretty good at understanding people doing things in politics. And we're over here actually trying to use the information we learned through the convention process. And I think that fight had a lot to do with you kind of pulling yourself out of politics altogether. And, you know, and I don't think that's unreasonable. I think mental health is the most important issue. So there's no, you know, resentment between us, I think. Now that I'm a very, very forgiving person. I'm like, yell at me, please, by all means, because I might accidentally yell at you. And I'm sorry. But that's how I wish the camera had switched to you for that smile, but that was exactly that's thank you. So what it comes down to is the leader who took over, I'm not gonna name names, but the leader who took over DemEnter, and the leader who I was not involved with, and the leader of the California progressive, whatever was going on here, she was the parliamentarian at the time, got together and had a discussion about I not being involved with DemEnter in any way. And it started this whole thing about Don lying about his association to things that were happening that were popular. Would you say, Jason, having been the person that I am misleading people or lying about what is going on here, and I wish this were live, because people would be like, this was edited, I don't believe he said that. So, you know, would you say that I've been dishonest with people about my involvement in what has gone on?
No, but I haven't heard every word that you've said to every person, so that, you know,
fair.
To
be fair.
I can't vouch for every word that Don Ford
why
has
don't
ever said.
you?
But I will say, from my perspective, from my part, you know, which frankly, you know, people who are involved in the thing, they all know my part. My part's pretty clear, frankly. The development of the concepts and ideas that led to the culmination or the creation of me creating a Facebook DemEnter group and community in a way.
You did a great job with that, by the way. Just want to say that you did a great job with that. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. I frankly, I think I did a great job with that too. I worked fucking hard on it, man. All of the ideas and concepts of entryism, I developed and learned while I was speaking with you. That does not mean that you created DemEnter.
Never said that.
Does not mean that you created entryism. Does not mean that I didn't get important advice from hundreds of people, thousands of people, frankly. But I will say that knowing that it was a real thing, that entryism was a strategy that could work for us. A good portion of that in me was due to you.
Oh, well, that's I appreciate that. And I'm glad, that's kind of what we want to do, right? We want to have this impact on people. That's a positive impact that basically have ruined your life by teaching you how to manipulate politics. No, I'm joking. No, no. We want to have this positive impact on people, and we need to know who is having this positive impact. Like, we know about your positive impact. We know we need you to come out of the jungle with your beautiful daughter, by the way, who well done with that. And get out there and have more of that positive impact. People know that it happened. And I feel like we're getting to a point in this story where we're now seeing the outcome of not knowing the whole thing. And so even in my own personal story, in order to understand what I'm saying over here, you have to know what we did over here. And so me saying I was a strategist at DemEnter at the time was I worked with Jason to do strategy until he left DemEnter, and then I was no longer a part of the official DemEnter apparatus. And that's the history as we're telling it, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, I guess I would refer you to my previous statement on the subject that happened. that happened. Oh, I don't know, 2 minutes ago.
Okay, cool. You don't have to repeat yourself in that case.
Generally speaking, yes.
That's good
again,
enough.
I try to be accurate. That's why I hate the word rigging. That's why I can't just simply agree with you or hardly anybody. Because there's always something that you said that I could be like, well, somebody could misinterpret that, so I wouldn't say it that way. I would just leave that part out, or I would leave it vague or whatever. So, these are all personality things that come through, and frankly, you need the people with all the different personalities.
We started
can't,
there.
if you're trying to do a grassroots thing without personalies,
what are you trying to do at that point? Because that's like the whole game.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. So Jason, thank you so much for giving me all this insight into everything and what's happening. I think it's insight for everyone. I say some of the things on my live stream. When I do my live stream, Jason is one of the people that he's my strategist for stuff. We have exchanged strategy at different times. There's plenty of stuff that I go to him for because he's a super smart dude. And I'm really hoping that we will get some likes on this video, and he'll continue doing this despite the people who tell him not to. So, Jason, anything you want to throw out there before we get out of here?
Well, I've taken a huge risk personally to my non-career in doing this, but I hope that some of the points that we made are actually valuable to people that can kind of catch the groove of what we're saying, even if people just catch the main thrust of all of this, which is if you want to change the rules, you got to be in the room where the rules are being changed.
And in addition to that, actually, I want to jump on that. The rules are often changed before we're even in the room to change the rules. If you show up on rule changing day and you haven't already talked to all the people that are trying to make rule changes, then you're walking in completely disarmed. All these decisions happen in the days and hours and weeks leading up to these meetings, because in the meetings, everyone just wants to go get drunk. And I wish that were not true, but it is, because this is their vacation with their family that they take off. That's why everything's early in the morning. They get finished with business, and they all go into thing. And that's really the politics of these DNC and state committee meetings. And if you want to create change, you got to make sure you're getting it done in advance of everything.
Yeah. And, I guess I just want to say as the core, I would say the core of our relationship, personal as friends, but then also in a, I'll say professional, but it borders
really.
It borders on professional, except for the paycheck part. But
what's that?
Don't ask. The thing that I think is most critical for people to recognize is how few people engage in this process. And, you know, I've said this so much in so many places because it really, really matters. And I feel like I need to say it here. Of all the people who support Bernie, a certain portion put themselves in a position to be able to vote for him. Of all those people that put themselves in a position to vote for him, some people actually go out and, you know, pull the lever or what have you. Of that group, there is a smaller portion that is willing to, you know, be a state delegate, be a national delegate, deal with the DNC, deal with the Democratic Party if they have to. Inside of that is an even smaller group that is willing to understand, and then there's a smaller group that's willing to take action. And what that ends, and that goes for the Bernie side of things and any other side you want to look at, the Hillary side, yada yada, whatever side you can figure out. And what that is an opportunity. What that is an opportunity. I forget the number of how many people voted in the primary total, in the presidential primary in 2016. Of that number, you could take maybe 1% of that. And that's how many people actually determined who the DNC is. That the DNC that we're dealing with right now was created by 1% of the people who voted in the primary in 2016. If you make yourself that 1%, you win. Like if you expand that to 2%, you win everything.
Yeah,
Everyone.
I'll actually jump in here on that, Jason. I'm actually looking at the numbers right now because you said you're like, I don't know them. I was like, well, I will look them up. 30 million people roughly voted in the primary whose ballots were counted.
Right.
Right. So I think that number is actually even smaller than you're suggesting. So when you say like 1% of 30 million, you know what I mean? I think it breaks down to even a smaller, tinier, thousands, like not in the tens or hundreds of thousands or in the thousands. Like it's a tiny group of people, and sending in the right people into the right. It's like back to that idea: work hard, work smart, not hard. It's back to the idea we talked about earlier about work smart, not hard. And I think that's really true when it comes to we have a limited amount of people, but we have more than they are using to control the party. And that is ultimately the basic math that I think if everyone walks away from this understanding one thing from this is that there are more of us than they are using to control the party in a majority of states. And these state party chairs control these election processes up to the point that they have a primary or caucus because the state house has to change whatever the rules. Like we can't just get rid of the Iowa caucus. The Iowa state house has to form a law and they're not going to pass it and it's never going to happen. So, we're going to have to cut off here, Jason. I'm going to get you back on here once we get through all that hate mail, or you get through the hate mail. I think the big thing we're saying here, guys, is entryism works. Getting involved is real. We need to really get involved right now because the time is critical and understanding the rules. Don't look to me or Jason to have to explain everything to you because it takes a long time. And I need you guys to look them up on your own. Wouldn't you say so, Jason? It's just kind of exhausting.
Absolutely. This is why we need to, do this again. But I have to say to that point, again, I will reiterate, if someone is in a room trying to make a decision or quote unquote win an argument, they can't call you or me. They can call you and me afterwards.
Actually, no, I have had people call me while they're in the middle of it, like freaking out. Oh yeah. Oh no, I get those phone calls. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I try to give them direction. And in 2016, we did things like Flip Missouri, but that only worked because we got out way, way ahead of it. It wasn't, and I'll tell that story next time we get on here. That's how we ended up taking the Missouri DNC, because it's that rollout of organizing and getting ahead of it, because there were more of us than there were of them. And this is a popularity game. People got to remember that. This is a popularity game.
For a person who wants to be effective on the inside of the party, they have to read all the documents. read the delegate selection plan, read the state party charter or constitution or bylaws or whatever you have. They need to read the call to the convention from the DNC, read the DNC charter. All of these things ground you in a base of knowledge, so you know if somebody's bullshitting. You know what is supposed to happen, so if what is supposed to happen doesn't happen, you know it while that's going on, not after the fact. Because after the fact, oftentimes, there's nothing you can do about it. It's already done. It's a matter of having the knowledge in the moment that you need it. And while, you know, I learn things all the time. People bring up crazy points, and then I'll go research it just to educate myself so that next time I encounter that, I'm more prepared and can just give the right answer, give the argument that works in that situation. So there is really no substitute for reading and understanding the rules or the governing document of all of these processes, whatever process you're going to be involved in. To know all of that information in your head so that you can pull it up and utilize it in the moment is, without that you're going to a gunfight with a knife, or whatever the analogy is. If you can go in there and tell people this is what the rules say, you've almost won already.
That really feels like it could be the difference between winning and losing in these situations. I'm gonna have to cut it off there. This has been Jason Eno, Bernie delegate from Hawaii. He's also on the rules committee there, and he is the original founder of DemEnter. So, Jason, thank you very much for being with me. I am Don Ford with Progressive Insider. Please check out some of our other videos. We have a lot of really good things coming out, and you can I'm supposed to say something about hitting a like button, but I'm still trying to figure out how YouTube works. So, thank you guys, and we'll have more for you soon.
That's Kahului, where the port is. That is the Pacific Ocean, and these are all fucking new houses.
Are you a realtor?
No,
I don't think he's happy with the new houses.
Oh no.